So Tim Burton's sequel to his 1989 summer blockbuster Batman was met with a bit of a mixed critical reception and performed below expectations at the box office, but still maintains some very interesting quirks to its history beyond its original theatrical run. So let's delve into the home video history of Batman Returns. So the massive success of Batman by director Tim Burton opened up a lot of doors for the burgeoning filmmaker, kind of laid the groundwork for his career moving forward. So much so the fact that Warner Brothers, no way they're not making a sequel to this entire film, and the fact is, we want to have the same guy at the helm of it that made a success the first time around, and so much so they wanted to loosen up the restrictions. I was like, okay, now we know what you can do. And we've seen that you can craft the IP into something that's extremely successful. Let's loosen the shackles and see how it goes off in much more of a wider creative direction. And so a lot of things changed the entire thing, where they moved production from UK over to Los Angeles, and pretty much changed almost the entire production team, like new production designers, new people involved in the art department, new cinematographer, everything like that. And they changed up the screenwriters. Now, screenwriter of the original film, Sam Hamm, does have a story credit in the film, but Daniel Waters gets the actual screenplay credit, who is best known for her screenplay for the film Heathers at the time, and also some uncredited rewrites by Wesley Strick, but mainly as Waters going the whole thing and trying to develop the entire thing with Burton, with this kind of wider, interesting, more complex themes involved in the entire thing, that by the time the thing got released and got in front of people, and they were kind of like having the mix of different things in the marketing. One, the marketing through TV spots and trailers is very much representative of the film in general, but once you get the entire thing where they're kind of marketing the merchandising, the Happy Meals, the toys, all the little things here and there towards a much younger demographic, that kind of skewed the entire perception of the film from certain parents and caught on a lot of friction overall. There's a lot of backlash to the film that's like, oh, you're trying to market to kids, but it's not designed for kids. It's a PG-13 film that has much more darker themes, psychological elements, a little bit more grotesque type of things. Some things are just not appropriate in that regard. So it's rated properly, but the image that was brought out to certain parents and stuff like that kind of projected something onto them to draw in a younger audience, which the film was not designed for. But the reaction from most film critics at the time was actually fairly positive. Like, they latched on to much more psychological elements of the film, much more action-packed qualities of the entire story, and various other things like the very strong performances he had. So a lot of them had a lot of very positive things to say about it. Some even felt like it was an even better film than the first film. Some critics not so much, but general consensus was very much a positive type of one. But some of the fans did have some criticism in terms of, like, very much Tim Burton interpretations of the Penguin and Catwoman being much very deviations from the very familiar source material of the comics. But Batman Returns was the very first Batman film I ever saw in the theater. My dad took me that summer, had a great time with it, and I've always really liked the film, but the box office didn't speak quite as well as this film as it did the original film, because the 89 film garnered $411 million worldwide, while Returns garnered $266 million worldwide, but $150 million less than the first film, which is definitely not what Warner Bros. Was probably looking for. Probably looking for something much more comparable to the first film. Not as great as they wanted to get in the entire thing, but it kind of influenced where they went next when they did Batman Forever, changed the director, changed the tone, changed what they wanted to do the whole thing, and changed the demographic they wanted to properly design the film for. Beginning up with the entire home video history here, because certain things to kind of lay out first. The fact that Batman Returns was the very first film released with a Dolby Digital 5.1 AC3 surround sound theatrically. But it would take a much longer time to get a home video release with that exact mix. Now, certainly there were other theatrical screens that had like a Dolby Stereo mix or a Matrix Surround mix, something like that. So not every single theater had the 5.1 set up yet, so they had to get a little different things here and there. And so the earlier home video releases definitely had a much more of a stereo Matrix Surround sound experience. Now, the VHS debuts in October 21st, 1992, and only gets the 4x3 version, kind of a cropped down, slightly opened up matte to a certain degree, not entirely open matte, not really pan scan, something in the middle in that regard. And unlike the first film, which got a late release in a widescreen version, this one did not, from my research. But the Laserdisc is where things get a little bit more kind of dicey, because I've mentioned disc rot in some things before, but I've never really been able to show you anything about it because the US pressing, there's a WEA USA pressing and there's a Pioneer pressing. Now the Pioneer one seems a lot more rare to find because I've looked around on eBay, I couldn't find anything. I even asked the people on the Laserdisc Forever group on Facebook if anyone had a Pioneer pressing to kind of give me some sort of information about maybe their version that has their pressing and see what the quality is and stuff like that. I was only able to find the WEA pressing, and it does have a little bit of a light disc rot. Now the entire thing of disc rot is the fact that certain plants that didn't press the things properly, they didn't have enough pressure on the entire thing when they're pressing the two sides of the disc together, or didn't have the proper glue or something else like that. Various things in the entire process that can happen with CDs, DVDs, stuff like that. If anything is not quite manufactured to the highest standards, you could have some problems with that, with the glue oxidizing or various other things, or maybe there's some crosstalk from one side to the next that the laser is kind of picking up things. All types of things can really happen that can kind of affect the entire image quality, the entire thing, and sometimes the audio quality as well. And certainly the WEA pressing I have, which is not universal, but the one I did grab does have some light showing of disc rot. All these little kind of colored little speckles are peppering across the video image is definitely signs of disc rot. I did a lot of research the entire thing, looked at other people's videos to see exactly, to verify that exactly what I was seeing was what I thought it was, and it is apparently disc rot. Now, when looking at the discs themselves, I can't see any sort of like cloudiness or any kind of discoloration or anything that really seems the signs of anything that would relate to disc rot, but that's definitely not a thing that would rule out the fact that you have disc rot on your Laserdisc or any other format that is an optical disc format. And so the Pioneer pressing is supposedly much more reliable in that regard. But I did hear from a lot of people who have WEA pressings. They're very good. They've got no problems with them. There's no rot. There's a perfectly clean image. So it's just a very random type of thing. It's very much a spotty type of thing that you could get a WEA pressing. It might be perfectly fine. You might get other ones that get a little bit of this thing going on where it only seems kind of prevalent, like maybe like the first half an hour of the film that kind of falls off the rest of the entire side of the disc. Then you flip it over and it kind of crops up again. Definitely is kind of all over the entire final side, which is a CAV version of the entire thing. So you get the much more supposedly better quality of the entire thing, but as it has disc rot, it's really kind of negating that regard. And that's definitely a shame because it is a really solid transfer. Like you can compare it to the first one where there's like a good transfer, but definitely sometimes they kind of just brighten it up to make it much more clearer. This one just has a much better black levels, like it's much bolder colors, much better contrast overall. Just resolves better. It's a better quality. Like the technology has kind of come along a little bit here and there to do the telecines and the transfers much better to get them much more on point overall. Just like it just excels so much more. So it's so much of a blemish on the whole thing that you could possibly get one in the US that has this disc rot problem with it. So the better option would be to go with the Japanese release. Now they did two separate releases. They did a 4x3 and a widescreen version of the entire thing. And they did a 1995 re-release, same as the first film. This kind of like 100th anniversary cinema collection type of thing. I don't know much about it, just like it was just a straight repackaging, slapped the entire thing. But the interesting thing is the fact that, as I said earlier, theatrically, Batman Returns had a Dolby Digital 5.1 AC3 surround mix. The very first one released theatrically. But that audio format does not debut on Laserdisc until 1994 with Clear and Present Danger. Now, a lot of films got re-released with AC3 surround tracks afterwards. They were put on before, then they re-released them, remastered them, stuff like that, such as The Hunt for October and Patriot Games, which I definitely focus on grabbing those versions specifically in that regard. And so the fact is, Batman Returns never gets re-released on Laserdisc. It never gets that AC3 surround sound format released on Laserdisc at all, period. It's just the stereo surround track, and that's it. And the Dolby Digital 5.1 AC3 surround mix would finally debut with the film when it hit DVD in 1997, which, like the first film, had a 4x3 version on one side and a widescreen anamorphically enhanced version on the other side, and they're both very different transfers. You look back and forth at them, just definitely different qualities. Like the 4x3 version, again, looks a little bit better. It's a tad bit darker. It's a little more detail overall. I don't know if it's just detail, if it's artificial sharpening, better compression quality. Somehow it just looks a little bit better. The colors are much stronger overall. Like everything in the entire 4x3 version just looks better than it does on the widescreen version. Like some faces look a little bit mushy in some places, not things quite as well defined. it's a little bit of a lesser transfer overall. So it's like the 4x3 version, even though again it's not exactly open matte, but it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more imagery than I feel like there was on the 4x3 version of the '89 film. A little bit more headspace, a little bit wider things, not quite as much cropped in and whatnot. You definitely see on certain trailers that you found online now that have been like 4K scans with 35mm negatives that do have a much more proper open matte format in that regard. So you can definitely compare that to the 4x3 version that we have on DVD and probably the VHS. It's probably similar formatting in that regard, but of course in 2005 we get the special edition box set and have brand new digital transfers, new DTS tracks, various bonus features, all types of stuff with music videos and trailers, documentaries, interviews, everything like that, commentary tracks, all things. So a lot of the same treatment the first film got, all the other films in this entire franchise got the exact same treatment in that regard. And when you're looking at the entire thing, because like I said with the first film, the DTS track on this release was just blowing me away. Just like this is much sharper, much more projection of the entire surround elements. I think probably because Batman Returns was actually done in this regard. It was actually created with a 5.1 mix theatrically. That doesn't have that much of a leap in quality to the DTS version. Certainly the DTS version is much more aggressive. But certainly doesn't stand out quite as much as the first film did when you got up to that DTS, which was just like, it was really, really strong, really kind of like sharp qualities, the whole thing. The DTS just kind of bumps up a little bit more. It's a little bit more activity overall, but I don't think it's quite as big of a leap as the first one was from the Dolby Digital to the DTS mix in that regard. And the brand new digital HD transfer of the entire film definitely is a step from the previous widescreen version because a lot more detail overall. Like everything just resolves a lot better in that regard. You can see a lot more of the detail in the faces. Things are a lot more better quality compression overall. Definitely the bolder colors, stronger colors, better skin tones overall. A lot of things just come up very well. Some places where some of the blues get kind of tipped over a little bit into a bit of a slight greenish teal area. Not terribly, but you can see in some cases when you're kind of looking at like Batman's costume and some nighttime sequences. Definitely a winner. Definitely a much bigger upgrade to the film that you had before. So I think it's really good. Like again, seeing the entire thing with all the documentaries, talking about a lot of the interesting things behind the scenes of the design of the film and the kind of casting in the entire film, how they went off. Where Annette Bening was originally going to play Catwoman, then she got pregnant, kind of brought in Michelle Pfeiffer, and like living hell, Michelle Pfeiffer owned the role of Catwoman. Selena Kyle, just like one of the best performances in the entire film. She just completely cracked out the entire park. Danny DeVito and the entire thing, just doing a great job. With a role that people kind of found in a weird type of way, because it got like a Razzie nomination, which like, who gives a shit about Razzies, but like, yeah, he's a detestable character, but he's portraying it so immersively, so much with so much gusto in the entire thing. It's like he's doing a great job of the entire thing underneath all of the ghastly makeup, the entire character. So everyone does a great job contributing to the documentary, the entire film, and all the other bonus features overall. Is like, it's a very strong wealth of information to grab up about what happened behind the scenes in the entire film and how they were crafting this in a different type of way than the first film, and see where things went off with the reactions and everything like that after the film was released, various things like that. So very good things in that regard. But then in 2009, with the original film and Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, got the Blu-ray box set. The entire thing's got Dolby True HD, 5.1 audio, 1080p picture, all that type of stuff. So it's definitely just a technical upgrade over the previous ones with the same transfers, same mixes, just with better quality, compression, and resolution and stuff like that. So on the first film, I didn't really kind of compare the Blu-ray audio to like the DVD audio, but as it has less compression, maybe a little bit more dynamic range, definitely leans a little bit towards the DTS mix, but not entirely as much that dynamic range. But still, the 5.1 mixes on the Blu-rays are very good quality, and certainly the transfers still resolve pretty well. There's pretty decent type of things where, again, boost in resolution gives you more detail, more quality, all that type of stuff. So they're good type of things. Maybe kind of dated a little bit as you got a little bit further on the Blu-ray format's life in that regard. So they're definitely kind of like yearning for something to kind of like give it a refresh, give it a little bit of bump up in that regard. But definitely Batman Returns always looked like a very, very good film. The production design from Bo Welch, the cinematography from Stefan Chomsky, which I hope is proper pronunciation for his name, all that type of stuff just comes off very, very good. Like they had all these big sound stages were just building everything as high as you possibly could, and Chomsky using a lot of things where like playing with the light, making a little bit more colorful film than the first one was in a lot of cases. The Penguin's Lair and various other places with some neon lights and some other things here and there. Just kind of playing with things a little bit more and being a little bit more artistic and expressionistic as he went along the entire thing. So, still comes off very well. And then just the fact is, Returns Forever, Batman and Robin don't get as much put on for like re-releases on formats as the first film does. Because the first film, yeah, I got the Diamond Lux edition. I got some steelbooks. I think the sequel's got maybe like one steelbook a piece, but not like got the kind of overall treatment to kind of pump it up a little bit more further. Didn't look quite as much as the first film did. And so the entire thing was the fact that we had to wait 10 years before we got the 4K remaster. Now, I could not find nearly as much reference material for Batman Returns as I could for Batman 1989 in terms of like 4K theatrical film print scans and photographs of actual film cells that kind of says how the film might have looked originally theatrically. So we just have to go from transfer to transfer, assess the qualities of the 4K version of the entire thing, and kind of see where things land in that regard. And I will say that the actual HDR grading on the 4K version mitigates some of the issues you have on the actual like 1080p Blu-ray disc, where the contrast is a little bit blown out in some places. The HDR grading kind of tempers that down a little bit and makes a much more smoother image in that regard in terms of gradation and stuff like that. So certainly some places in this 4K scan and remaster that does employ a lot of heavy teal cast. A lot of things in terms of certain nighttime sequences definitely shows off in that regard. It definitely shows very much in contrast to the previous transfer of the entire film. But there are certain other scenes in the entire film that look pretty comparable to how the films looked previously, just like better vibrance, a little brighter image, like at the entire scene where Bruce Wayne and Snake Kyle Wayne Manor sitting in front of the big fireplace and has an amber glow, but it's not overcooked. Like the 89 film transfer definitely had a lot of things where just like the colors, the contrast just got overcooked. So it's a little bit more dialed in, just a little bit more temperament to how they use some of the grading on the entire film. And we look at something like the Penguin's Lair. All the kind of green lights and stuff like that comes up more in this transfer, how they're using the color gels and the production design, the costume design, the makeup, all the different things. I think it looks pretty good towards how the entire scene was previously presented on different transfers. This one just kind of brings out more things that I feel like were present in how they designed the visuals for the entire set. And certainly some places the skin tones look nice. Like in terms of like how the lighting is in certain sequences, but it's kind of warmer lighting, the skin tones come out very nicely. But sometimes they're kind of dialing in a little bit of that teal element in the entire grading, kind of washes out some of the skin tones at certain points in time. So it's kind of mitigated elements here. So it's like they took what the 89 film had and kind of like someone pulled it back a little bit, but still had some of the similar choices in terms of that more modernistic teal cast in some places. That feels like maybe that probably wasn't the case in 1992 when the film was released theatrically. And some of the things just kind of enhanced what was already being done in terms of like the cinematography and the lighting that was going on in certain sequences. So it's a much better quality thing than the 89 film was. And certainly, like I said, on the 89 film, when I watched it with HDR grading, I turned on that expert color setting with the cinema picture setting in that regard. So it kind of makes things look a little bit more dialed into much of a warmer color space. So that kind of mitigates some of that quality as well. So it looked, in that regard, when I was watching it that way, the transfer didn't look terribly bad. It like didn't have quite as much of a weird quality to it as the 89 film did. I still found it much more of an enjoyable watch overall. I felt like it was a much more pleasing image to a certain degree than the 89 film. Looking contrast between the two of them, this is definitely a slightly better version of a remaster for one of those films from Tim Burton. Now, like all the other films in this 4K box set, this film did get a brand new Dolby Atmos remix, and they didn't go and change a whole bunch of like sound effects like they did for the first film, but they did add some odd little flourishes in the entire thing. So they did change some elements overall, just very minor type of things that some people picked up on, like when the entire shot is kind of swooping up the entire Shrek building at the beginning of the film. That's where kind of swooshing sound effect thing as they pass all the different girders and everything like that. like stuff like when you have the meeting between Bruce Wayne and Max Schreck, and Bruce kind of flings the entire commission report at Schreck. You had extra like sound effects, the entire paper rustling on the entire book.
Commissioned this report. I thought you might want to take a look at it. I commissioned this report. I thought you might want to take a look at it.
It's just these weird little things that kind of like decide to add these extra flourishes to enhance what was going on visually for the film, which was not part of the original sound mix. So it's always a little bit contentious type of things when they kind of add new things into it, or like the first film, replace a bunch of things on top of it. And certainly, like the first film, the Dolby Atmos mix is kind of mixed down into a Dolby Digital 5.1 mix, so you still don't get the original 5.1 mix that was screened theatrically for the entire film. So still another contentious point on the entire thing. So it's not as much of a egregious type of thing. Like, I didn't even notice it watching the film. I didn't know the film that deeply, particularly in that regard, to notice these little things going on. So I went and did some research, kind of looked up some things here and there, and looked at some different scenes and compared them back and forth. They really kind of stood out to a certain degree, but you could definitely watch the film and not really kind of pick up a lot of the stuff. It's very, very minor, subtle little things, but still some things that might irk some people who are big fans of the entire film. Now, I did do a visual spot check on Batman Forever and Batman and Robin in 4K HDR, and there's like none of these problems. There's no teal cast, there's no blown out contrast, no overcooked colors. Looks pretty faithful to how the films always looked before, just looking better than it has before. And so it's kind of an interesting thing how the Burton one's got this kind of controversial, contentious 4K treatment. The Schumacher one's nice and breezy, like no problems whatsoever. No one's complaining about a damn thing with those. This is kind of a weird type of imbalance type of thing overall. It's just like the Burton one films were their own animal, then the Schumacher ones are their own other animal. And certainly that's much more of a thing now, obviously in 4K, where they're treated very differently in that regard. And so it's, again, the thing like there's no providence. Like I said with the first film, Warner Brothers never say it like, this colorist worked on this thing, or they looked at an answer print from Tim Burton, or looked at an interpositive, or a theatrical film print. There's nothing said about what they reference to make these color grades for the 4K transfers. So it just creates a lot of debate on the entire thing that cannot be totally resolved without some further evidence or some other word officially from Tim Burton or Warner Brothers or other people who worked on the film before or since about the entire color grade that we see now in 4K in that regard. So I really like to hear what you guys feel about Batman Returns in general and how you kind of grew up with the entire film and discovered it in that regard. If you saw the theater in '92, which releases you had, which ones you still have, if you had a Laserdisc that did have the disc writer or one that didn't have the disc writer, I'd definitely like to hear what you feel about it, because just kind of a shame that it inflicted at that US release, and anything that's not rotted is either a Japanese one or one that's much more of a rare pressing overall, and kind of a hard thing to really kind of pinpoint with actually buying the disc and checking it out for yourself. So the interesting type of things, and certainly how the audio mix kind of stepped up in some places here and there. You got from the Dolby Digital, the DTS, the True HD, the Dolby Atmos type of stuff. So slight increments of quality in that regard, getting more dynamic range, more bit rate, all that type of stuff. Really good type of stuff. So it's an interesting experience in that regard. And so I really like to hear what you guys feel overall about that type of stuff. And it's interesting that it's not the end of the Burton Batman verse, because in recent years we've got some extensions on the entire thing. Like they've gone back, since kind of things skewed off going into the Schumacher films, they kind of gone back and added more stuff into that lore. Because they did Batman '89, a comic book from DC Comics that continued on after Batman Returns with the Michael Keaton Batman, going off in different directions, introducing different characters, their own version of Robin, all the different things. And there's also the novel Batman Resurrection, which takes place between Batman '89 and Batman Returns, that has like Alexander Knox and Max Schreck and various other characters going in and out of the entire story. So I found John Jackson Miller's writing on the entire thing is very faithful to the Keaton Batman and follows along a lot of the psychological elements you found kind of going into Return. So I'm finding it's a pretty good novel. Probably have a much longer way to go. So if you finish it already, I'd like to hear your general thoughts without spoilers about what that is, and certainly the Batman '89 thing, which was written by Sam Hamm, the screenwriter of the '89 film, all that type of stuff. So it's nice to see that kind of renaissance and the revisiting of the Batman Burton-verse overall in that regard. So get your comments below, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you haven't. There's always a Patreon to contribute something every month and get early access to things around here, and also the Super Things feature to contribute directly to YouTube. So thanks so much, guys. Take care.